Hey everyone, and welcome back to the live stream. This is part two of our workshop on medical coding careers. Today, we are going to be discussing what to look for in a medical coding school. So, if you missed part one, you can catch it on the replay. It is available on the YouTube channel. I believe it's still on Facebook and it will be on LinkedIn for a little while as well. Saying hi to all of our friends today, coming to us from Facebook, coming to us from LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and of course, our friends here on TikTok as well. Um, really excited to talk about this one today and medical coding schools, what to look out for. Just to kind of preface this, I know a lot of people want me to give specifics on schools. Like, Victoria, do you think that MedCerts is a good school? Do you think that, the University of such and such is a good school? I've only gone to 1 or 2 coding schools myself, so it's kind of hard for me to give intimate feedback about them. There's so many different schools out there, and a lot of them have different curriculums. I can kind of take a look and see if they prepare for the right things, but I can't really give an opinion on all of the different programs out there because I just don't have that intimate of a knowledge of them. So today we're going to kind of go over what to look for in your medical coding school, some of the things that you want to make sure that they include. If they don't include them, how we navigate around that. And then some things that you want to think about as far as cost and budgeting. All of us have different budgets in mind when we're going back to school and how we can sometimes buffer that as well. So I'm coming to you hot on Monday. It's my kid's first day of school. I'm sure it is for a lot of you parents out there as well. But let me know where you're coming from today. And if it's your first stream or if you've tuned in a handful of times in the past. And without further ado, we're going to get into today's live stream. All right, everyone. So glad to be back here with y'all. And yeah, today we're going to be doing interactive stuff. So I want to make sure that you guys are leaving comments, stuff that you're looking for in your medical coding school search, or maybe you're already in medical coding school and you're like, Victoria, did I make the right choice? Sometimes I'll get messages from people and they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm in a weekend and I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z. And maybe they can potentially still change course a little bit. So let's talk a little bit up today about medical coding schools, what we need to look for, what might not be as hard of a consideration, and some of those terms that you'll see that maybe don't mean quite as much as you think they do. Let me get the presentation in order today. Today's presentation is sponsored by Preppy, which is the organization that I partner with for my medical coding viewers. I send all of my students over to them because I just do not have, do not have the capability to handle how many subscribers are we up to? 210,000. So that's a considerable amount of students for a solo business to handle. And I like being a small business, and Preppy lets me do that because they take amazing, amazing care of all of the students that I send their way. We're not going to talk too much about them right now. Let's talk about what to look for when we are looking at medical coding schools and some of the things to consider. So, what are we looking for when we're looking for medical coding schools? We want to look out for schools that don't really have either a clear, we'll call it accreditation, um, but more specifically, um, that they don't have the appropriate certification outcomes. We'll talk more in a couple slides about accreditation and about certifications. But what I'm really talking about is these training programs that aren't preparing you for certifications that would hold water in our industry. So if it's just a very generic course on medical coding that you found through an Instagram ad, or God forbid, I've seen these in the past, a Groupon, or even the courses on Udemy, or if someone's like, hey, send me your WhatsApp and I'll send you this medical coding course. There's a lot of people out there that will sell dirt cheap medical coding courses, because they just threw a bunch of crap together. Some of these people, they've been in the industry for a while and they do know what they're talking about. Some of them are just scammers. They're looking to make a quick buck. They found something in a bootleg, dark web a website that's, maybe bootlegged from another school, or they stole it from the AEPC, and they just went, "Oh, yeah, we'll just take these slides and throw some voiceover to it and try to make some quick and easy money." Usually when you find a course that is very inexpensive, it tends to be too good to be true, right? And they usually are not what you're gonna need for certification. So they might be something that's good if you just kind of wanna get a little flavor, you wanna learn a little bit about medical coding and medical billing, and you're like, I just wanna know what it is." Or maybe you're a healthcare provider and you're like, "Hey, I don't really work with this, but I just kinda wanna know a little bit about it." Maybe that's a good option, but if you're looking into this as a career, you really wanna make sure that you are going to a proper program, not just some quick and easy, cheapy online program. If it's something that maybe you can complete in a weekend, that's not gonna be sufficient to prepare you for a certification. So, typically in medical coding, most people take anywhere from 3 to 9 months to prepare for a certification exam, like, from someone who has absolutely no knowledge in medical coding to, "Hey, I'm ready to sit for my official certification exam." That is usually a 3 to 6 months. It can be done shorter for people who have less on their plate. If you're someone who is single, you are only working part-time, you don't have as many responsibilities, you can probably get it done in a faster amount of time if you have more time to dedicate. Most people, it's probably going to be more that 6 to 9 months. I have seen some people do it in as little as 3, but usually the majority of people are 6 to 9 months. There are longer programs out there. You'll find some that will give associate's degree programs. You do not necessarily need an associate's degree for medical billing and coding. Some people like to have that because they want to have that as a good foundation in case they later decide, you know what, maybe I want to go for my bachelor's degree and they already have their associates accomplished. But it's really not needed for medical billing and coding. The only time associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees come into play is if you're getting certifications through a HEMA for health information technology, which coding is a part of, but not the whole thing. It covers a lot more health information technology than just coding. So, again, not to get too far into the accreditation, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Um, Watch out for inflated promises like we're gonna guarantee you a job. I don't know of a single organization out there, and I have scoured and scoured, that can guarantee you a job. I have definitely seen some scams online that people have pointed out where they said, "Hey, we'll train you, and all you have to do is just buy a bunch of equipment from us, and we'll give you a job." And those tend to not be, um, valid valid job listings. They tend to be, some kind of internet scam, some or another. Now, I would recommend not paying more than $5,000 for a medical billing and coding program. There's a lot of good programs out there that are more in the 1,500 to $3,000 range. We'll take a look actually at the AEPC website when I'm done with this slide, because I wanna show you what the AEPC charges, because I don't recommend paying more than what you could get like CPC certification training for directly with the AEPC. Unless they're gonna give you some kind of mega bells and whistles. If they're gonna give you a personal tutor, if they're gonna give you guaranteed job placement, if they're gonna give you, you know, the world on a silver platter, then maybe it's worth sorry, I'm flipping around here, and I were probably flipping all of my StreamYard people around. Oh, Instagram, you guys need to go over here. Hold on one second, I wanna make sure I'm moving my stuff around there. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so I would definitely not recommend paying more than $5,000 because you can get probably, I think, the top tier program with the AAPC for less than that. Um, as far as reviews, take the reviews with a bit of a grain of salt. The reason I say that is because where's the rest of my stuff? Um, I've gone online and looked at reviews of even Ivy League colleges, and you will find many, many terrible reviews of Ivy League colleges. In fact, there's the only things that I can seem to ever find positive reviews on online are like merch, like clothing and food, restaurants and things like that. People love to complain online. So oftentimes those complaints, especially for schools, tend to be tipped towards the negative just in general. You'll see a lot of negative reviews for the AEPC. You'll see negative reviews for, some of the best training programs out there, colleges, etc. And some of it is genuinely because people go in with unrealistic expectations, or it could just be things like, you know, the the education space is tough. Learning a new skill set, learning new tasks is very difficult, and people struggle with that. And some people tend to be more prone when they have something that they're struggling with instead of blaming inwardly, they blame outwardly. It's hard to stop and go, this might be a me problem. Like I'm really struggling with this. Maybe I need to study more. Maybe I need to, put my phone aside and focus. It's harder to do that than it is to go, oh well, it's the school's fault. It's easy to go, oh, blame someone else, right? So I think there is some of that element in that into why you see so many negative reviews. The program that I partner with, Preppy, we've even had instances where I've gone online and seen things, and then as I did some digging, I found out that those negative reviews were placed there by the competition, which makes sense. It's a very competitive space. So there are people out there that are from competitors that are intentionally making negative comments about all of the different organizations out there, because they want to promote their services instead. When I get here into some of the comments, I have too many tabs open right now, Victoria. Um, Nicole says it's her second time here. She's streaming from Oregon. I've never been to Oregon. I hear it's beautiful out there. Um, Chrissy said, I felt very confident with my choice of AEPC, but now I have a question on the program that I purchased. So I called them and they told me the only way I could get a response is to email a certain email. Yeah, sometimes the communication with them can be a little bit tough. I've even had issues with them being closed on the weekends. Over the weekend, I wanted to purchase an extra subscription to Codify. I have one that I purchased for my extern that's working for me right now. And I'm like, oh, I need one for myself as well because there was something I wanted to look up with Codify. And it wouldn't let me do it online. And I'm like, well, I have to call, but it's the weekend now and no one's there. Um, Doretta, oh no, Dorotea says, my local community college has the medical billing and coding certificate program in person for $1,300 and it's 4 months long. What do you think? It's called Houston Community College. I am a proud community college certificate girl. I think $1,300 is a good price. It's a little low. So I would want to make sure of a couple of things there. First, what are they including? Because you might have to consider, do you have additional costs of books and memberships and exams and all of that? And also, what certification are they preparing you for? Because you want to look for the certifications that we'll be talking about in a couple of minutes with this live, with the live. Sandy says she's studying with Preppy right now. Awesome. Hope it's going super, super well. And we have here Juder says, "Hello, I'm looking to become a medical biller and coder soon. I have 4 years medical experience as a certified medical assistant." That's awesome. Yeah, I've known a lot of people have been very happy with making the switch from clinical personnel to kind of behind the scenes personnel. Let me just check my Instagram and see um, what else we have. Nothing right now coming to with Instagram. TikTok is saying, "I need to complete the AAPC course, but have this month to finish off on those tests." Yeah. And that's another thing to consider when you're looking at a school is how long are they going to give you access to that preparation? Because most people take like the 6 to 9 months, you might have a program that only gives you 6 to 9 months, or they might give you 1 year. So make sure that whatever you're purchasing, that it's correct time frame for you. You might have to look at things like, if it's an online course, are you going to have to pay for extensions? So if maybe they only give you 6 months and you don't complete it in 6 months, how much will you have to pay for each additional month to continue to extend that? Some of the things that your program should include, if it is a legit program: comprehensive training on ICD-10, CPT, and HCPCS. Those are the primary codes that we use for most medical coding jobs, with the exception of inpatient coding, also requires ICD-10 PCS. Look for PCS coding, though, only if you are specifically looking for an inpatient facility coding job. We talked last time about how there are different types of medical coding. We have inpatient, outpatient, pro fee, and risk adjustment. And inpatient coding is coding for the hospital facility. So, for your room and board and all of the wonderful services that you receive when you are an inpatient in the hospital. And that is a reimbursement that goes to that facility, and it includes ICD-10 PCS. That's not taught in other programs because it's only used for inpatient coding. So you would have to get a certification like the CCS or the CIC. Most people go for like a CPC certification. That's the majority of medical coders go for that certification. Um, so medical terminology and anatomy, you need to know med term and anatomy to understand medical coding. Um, it would be kind of like going to a foreign country and not understanding any of the language or having access to resources to look them up. It's easier to go to a foreign country if you speak the language versus having to look it up every single time, right? Or use a translator. Um, and with med-term and anatomy, there are cost-effective options for that. So say you find a really great program, but they're like, "Hey, we have a prerequisite that you have to take, or you have to have knowledge of medical terminology and anatomy." There's free courses that people have said that they found through their community colleges, through their tech schools, through their libraries. I also have a book that I really like. This is an older edition of it, but this is Medical Terminology and Anatomy for Coding. There's a 5th edition of this now. The only difference between the older editions and the newer editions is that obviously med term and anatomy hasn't changed, but some of the codes have changed. So they tie this into coding scenarios. And because of that, with when the codes change, some of those coding scenarios, they might need to update the codes on. So it's not like if you find like an older 3rd edition and it's like $10, grab it up, because the only thing that's gonna change is some of those coding scenarios. It's still an amazing resource for coders to learn medical terminology and anatomy. So there are resources there for cheap med term and anatomy. You can even, I'm sure, find lots of free courses on YouTube that'll just teach med term and anatomy. Compliance and insurance basics, usually that comes before learning the codes themselves. The way most courses are structured, they kinda get you in, they teach you med-term and anatomy, and then they start teaching you about, like, health insurance and compliance, and then you start learning the codes at the end. You have to kinda set that foundation before you can build on that with the coding components. It makes much more sense, and you'll be much more well-rounded and prepared for certifications if you have the med-term and anatomy, and then start learning some compliance and insurance basics, and then start learning the codes. And they should include CPC exam preparation or equivalent. Some won't specifically say this will prepare you for the CPC exam, um, but have really good curriculum in them as well. But if they don't specifically say CPC, because some of them prepare for other certifications like the CBCS, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad program. It's just that they probably don't include things that are specifically preparing for the CPC, like how to tackle the format of the CPC exam. They probably won't include any kind of membership or review courses or stuff like that. Um, I'm seeing a comment here on TikTok that says, "Do you see my comments?" Yep, but I am going through right now presentations on YouTube and stuff. Can't hear her. It should be linked up. Okay. Let's see here. So next is, as we're flying through, accreditation versus certification. I should like wheel over my big screen and put it like back here so that way TikTok can see it as well, since you can't share across the board through all the platforms and TikTok at the same time. In any case, when we talk about accreditation is that school's educational standards. It might be regional, it might be national. And then we have certification. Certification is your professional credential, like a CPC or a CCS, or even something like an RN or a CNA. That's a certification. So when we hear the term accreditation, or is a program accredited when it applies to medical coding, that really doesn't come into play. The only thing that comes into play as far as accreditation is if you're sitting for certain AHIMA certifications, the American Health Information Management Association, and you're looking to get one that requires an advanced degree, that requires an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree like the RHIT or RHIA. For medical coding jobs, you do not have to go through any specific program in order to sit for certifications through the AAPC. AHIMA has some coding certifications that they'll say, "Oh, well, we recommend you go through these types of programs or have these types of trainings," but they, again, will not require it with the exception of their advanced credentials in health information technology, not medical coding. So, you will see some programs that will claim they are accredited by the AAPC, but when we look at, and I'm gonna flip over for those of you on YouTube and Facebook and all that. I'm gonna flip over to the AAPC website and show you guys something, because maybe that'll kinda it'll tie it in, I think, maybe a little bit better. Let me get the site up. We're dragging Monday morning. The sites are dragging, just like me, just like maybe some of you a little bit. Let's see here. So if we go into the AAPC website and we go into there it is. So on the AAPC website, hey, that's not what I wanna share. Hold on, present, share, stop screen. There we go. Okay, there we go. So if we go to the AAPC website, under here, under education solutions, they have this curriculum licensing. So sometimes organizations will claim they are accredited with the AAPC, but all that means is they paid a big fee to the AAPC so that they could license all of the materials that they have already put together. So this is the information that the AAPC has on licensing their curriculum. So some schools, some independent instructors, some different places have paid the AAPC to use the materials that they have already developed, all their test banks, all of their um, PowerPoint slides, all of their review tests, all of that, and they just basically are approved to utilize that material. When we look at the certification for the CPC and what the requirements are to sit for it, taking the exam, let's see if it's under there. Okay. I think they have it on here. I wonder if they have it on here. Basically, if you want to sit for the CPC exam, there are some things that they recommend you do. They recommend training, but you are not required to sit through any formal training. I mean, I could pull someone off the streets and sign them up for the CPC exam and they could sit and take it tomorrow. The only requirements are that you become a member of the AAPC and that you pass the exam. In order to keep your credentials, you also have to stay a member of the AAPC. So there's some things that they will recommend, but they're not requirements. So it's not that you have to go through an accredited program, but some people will call themselves an accredited program because they license the official material from the AAPC. Let me get over to my PowerPoint. Okay, we're back on PowerPoint. Um, you really want to make sure that it's a program that is either aligned with or prepares for certifications with the AAPC or AHEMA. Again, there's programs out there that will say will prepare you for the CBCS or other certifications. That's cool. Even if they include it, some will include a training with the CBCS, or I'm trying to think of what the other ones out there are. But employers are really looking for certifications through AAPC or AHEMA. If I go into Indeed.com and I type in CPC, a ton of jobs are going to come up because employers are looking for people with that credential. If you ever question if a certification that you're looking at is going to be viewed as valid or accepted by employers for positions, go into Indeed, type in those credentials, and see how many jobs up. Because I know if I search for the CPC, thousands of jobs are going to come up. If I search for some other billing coding credentials, you might get two or three jobs. So that's my tip. I don't like to discourage anyone from obtaining a certification that they might have their eyes on or they think they might want to get. But personally, CPC is a good one. CCS, CCSP through AHEMA is also good. But with if your goal is to get the CPC certification, you do not have to have a college accredited. You do not have to have an AAPC approved or anything like that type of training. But the better your training is, the more likely you are to pass the certification exam. Yeah, so I have a commenter here on TikTok. Smiley Gem says, "Yes, my program offers the CBCS, but I know I need to take the CPC certification." Yeah, there's a lot of programs that do include it, and I think because I don't know if they get it for free or a discount at certain programs. Like people who issue that credential, I think really get in with some of these colleges and stuff. Um, and that's cool if you still wanna sit for it, if it's included or whatever, but when we're talking about coding jobs, they really want that CPC. So, how does Preppy kinda come into play? So I talked a little bit about Preppy and how they sponsor the channel, and we partner with them. I send them all of my students because I can't take on the volume of students, that are looking to get into medical coding training, so I can't individually teach students. So what Preppy does is they offer very affordable, focused training specifically geared for certifications such as the CPC, but other certifications as well. It is 100% online. It is self-paced. One of the cool things about Preppy versus, like, if you were like, "Hey, but Victoria, I want you to teach me medical coding." Well, Preppy can offer you a certificate of completion through Auburn University, which is a very prestigious university. I can't do that. I'm not a university. I can't give you a certificate of completion. I mean, I guess I could give you a certificate of completion, but it would just say, like, it would I don't it wouldn't hold the notoriety that this one does. They do have externships available to get real world experience, and those are real externships, not like mock modules that you go to. And it really does help prepare you for the CPC certification, and they have a lot of other features available, like resume support, like career services. I've I'm working on getting together with Auburn to talk more about the specifics of that, but they're a great program, and they are very affordable. Now, on the topic, though, of affordability, you have to keep in mind that if you're looking at a more budget-friendly program, it's not gonna come with as many bells and whistles. If you want bells and whistles, you have to pay a little bit more for it. So if you want someone who's gonna get back to your emails within 2 hours, that means that they have to staff a ton of medical coders that know those answers to those questions, people that can provide tech support. If you want, membership to things, if you want certification, vouchers included, that's gonna keep racking up those costs. If you want the biggest, fanciest books included, that's gonna keep racking up those costs. So what Preppy is, it's like, we're gonna give you what you need, but we're gonna not gear it toward it's not geared towards, I'll say, it's a billing and coding program, right? So some people just wanna go in billing. That means that they might not wanna take the CPC exam. They might not wanna become a member of the AEPC. They might have other materials that they have with their employer, so they're not gonna give you vouchers if not everyone wants to sit for the same certification exam. So there are few things that you do have to pay out separately with Preppy. Um, some people want the AMA edition of the CPT book because you need that for the certification exams. So there are options that you can use ebooks with your exams instead, so if you don't wanna have to separately purchase the books that come with Preppy. Um, but if you're someone that you're like, "Victoria, I don't like that you have a financial interest in that. I don't like that you're recommending me this because, I'm concerned that you're just doing it because of that financial interest." You can go directly through the AEPC and get training through them as well. I have videos about self-study as well. If you're looking at a tech school though, or a community college, again, just remember, I wouldn't recommend spending more than a few $1,000s because you could just go directly through the AEPC and spend that money and get everything you need. Um, and really look for those certifications as well. Like if you're someone who's wants to go into a university, you wanna be there in person, you want someone who's there so that if you're looking at something in your book and you're thinking you're doing it wrong, that someone's right there looking at you going, "No, no, no, flip over to this page," or, "We have to look at this." If you want in-person training, it's probably gonna cost more too, because that means someone has to physically drive there and teach you in person. So, if you want something online, affordable, flexible, that you can work on demand, at your own schedule, at your own pace, Preppy might be great for you. But if you're someone who wants the in-person experience, or you want, your vouchers and everything included, there's other options out there. You can go directly through the AEPC, you can go through organizations like, I know there's CCO.US, there's oh, what's the one that everyone says? I know Danita has one that's pretty good. I can't think of off the top of my head the other one it's not Ultimate Medical Coding. It'll come to me. Um But before you enroll, there's some things that you should ask or at least look into. So, what is the total cost? And think about things like your books, your exam fees, your membership. I talked about Preppy, but Preppy includes ebooks. One of them isn't valid for the CPC certification, but you can buy your membership to the AEPC separate and your exam voucher, and you can use ebooks, which won't cost anything additional if you want to use the ebooks. AAPC will embed them in the exam platform, and you can use all of those ebooks while you're taking your exam. How long will the program take to complete? And also consider the extensions. So if you're looking at a program through your tech school and it's on demand, ed2go, some people have done well with ed2go, but if it's one of those types of programs where they just kind of like take it out of a box and stick it into their learning management system for the college, know what that cost might be if you have 6 months and you don't complete it in 6 months, like, what's the extension fee? And how long is it gonna take to complete? What certifications will it prepare for? So, CPC through AAPC or CCSP or CCS through AHEMA. If you want your CCS, though, you have to have training in ICD-10 PCS. Is there job placement? Is there resume support? There's some programs that they will give you great education, but then, like, it's like, "Boop, now you're on your own." You gotta figure out how to get your resume together. They're not gonna have anyone for you to network with. They're not gonna give you additional support. They're just like, "We did your training. That's it." And then others that they do have some support. So if you're gonna need that, if maybe you haven't written a resume ever, or if you've not written one in a long time, that might be something to weigh or at least know ahead of time. So that way okay, well, when I complete it, I have to look at a program like Project Resume or Sarah over at Caffeinated Coder or figure out a workshop. Maybe you have a business organization near you. Sometimes those different small business bureaus and stuff will offer workshops on things like resumes, or you're like, "Hey, you know what? I'm just gonna go on YouTube and search it up and figure out how to do my resume." And then also, does the program include the contact hours for CPCA removal, which I think is on the next slide that we're gonna talk about, yeah. So the apprenticeship status removal. When you sit for the CPC exam with the AEPC, if you do not have 2 years experience, or the equivalent, you will automatically be designated an apprentice coder. So you sit for the CPC exam, but if you don't have those 2 years experience or equivalent, you are automatically designated an apprentice coder. There are ways to get that off faster other than just 2 years of experience. One of them is this module that they have called Practicode. It is very difficult. They just give you these coding cases and they're like, code these, and here's some blanks to fill in all of the different codes. There's not a ton of support for it. And if you complete all of these tons of coding cases and you get the correct accuracy on them, you can remove 1 year off that 2 year apprenticeship status. The other thing that can take a year off is if you have 80 contact hours of coding education. So if you can get a transcript that said you had 80 contact hours, you have a certificate of completion that says 80 contact hours, you went through the AEPC and they already have record of your 80 hours, or you go through a program like Preppy where they can print out that you have that 80 contact hours and submit that to the AAPC. So if you complete Practicode and you do those 80 contact hours, it will help you remove that apprenticeship status faster. A lot of times there are jobs where the recruiters were told, don't hire apprentice coders. So they'll hire people that have their CPC, but not their CPCA. So the faster you can get that A removed, the faster you can qualify for more positions. I have a question coming through TikTok. How can I start self-studying for medical coding? If you go to my YouTube channel, there are videos that I have specifically about all of the resources on self-studying medical coding. Essentially, if you want to self-study, you need to learn MedTerm, you need to learn the different code sets, and then you need to sit for your certification exam if you're looking for a job. So, there's a book called Medical Terminology and Anatomy for Coding that I like that will teach you those foundations of med term and anatomy. The books that I recommend for self-study are called Step by Step Medical Coding, and they are by Elsevier, I believe. So Step by Step Medical Coding, there's a textbook and there's a workbook, and those will teach you to, um, how to learn medical coding. You'll also need the code books themselves, ICD-10, CPT, and HCPCS if you're going for your CPC exam. So all those books together, like, it's not free to self-study. It is cheaper, but there's some programs that aren't much more than above that, but it is possible. So in order to get those books, the MedTerm and Anatomy book is maybe like $80. The 3 code books together about 300, and then the textbook and workbook is gonna be another 150, $200. So that's the books that you need to self-study. Excuse me. But I've known some people that love self-study. They've said, "This is the greatest thing. I self-studied, you can do it too. It's not that hard. Here's what I use. Anyone can do this." And there's some people that are like, "Absolutely not. I tried self-study and it was the worst decision I ever made. I wound up having to enroll in a program anyway." So because everyone has all of these different learning styles, you're gonna find the variety of differences of opinions on that and a multitude of things um, as far as opinions of schools and stuff. Now, I wanna get back for those of us following on the major platforms with the exception of TikTok. I wanna share some stuff on the AAPC website about removing your A. So the AAPC does have their apprenticeship status removal online. There is a nice little there we go. There's a nice little portal that they have now that gives you everything you need to know. They have templates for the letters that you might need from your employer if you're just doing 2 years of experience or 1 year of experience and 80 contact hours. So they have everything that you need to fill out, and then you can just submit it through the portal. But if you have questions specifically about the apprenticeship status removal, that's on the AAPC website. I do also like to take a look while we do this at pricing with the AAPC, just so that you're kind of aware what we're talking about. So with the CPC, if we are preparing for the exam and we're signing up for training, let's see here. Preparing. So the self-paced with the AAPC right now is $2,999. The top tier program is 4,999, which is why I say don't pay more than $5,000 for training for the CPC program because you can literally just go on the AAPC website and get like the ultimate package with the AAPC, which would include like everything. It's going to include your training, your books, I think unlimited exam attempts, code lookup tools, review classes, practice exams, study guides. It's gonna include, I think this one they include an externship, guaranteed internship placement. So that's like the ultimate tiered package. And you can see that there's 3 different tiers here. So again, just kind of demonstrating that if you want something that's budget friendly, if you want something that's a lower cost, you kind of have to set your expectations. It's not going to include exam vouchers and maybe study practice cases, and it's not going to include someone who's going to hold your hand a little bit more because that's going to be more of an expensive tier because they have to have all those resources and develop them and staff them and all that good stuff. um, let's get into some questions now that we have coming through our different channels. So we have here Kimberly saying, "My CPC exam is scheduled for Wednesday. I did the practice exams and scored in the 90s on all 3. That is phenomenal." Any study I don't feel like you should be giving me study tips if you got all in the 90s on all 3 of them. I did my course through Cuesta College and included everything. It was really, really good. If you did all the practice exams with the AAPC and scored in the 90s on all of them, I don't know that there's really a lot more that I can kind of give you as far as study tips, other than I do have a video on some of the top missed concepts. If you haven't seen that, I would check that out as well. Renee says, "I'm currently a retrieval associate. I collect medical records for risk adjustment and HEDIS. But I do not have hands-on coding experience. Currently looking for an entry-level position to gain that experience." One of the videos that we will be doing is talking about job search, and I actually did another job search video. I think that was last week's video. I have lots of job search tactics. Um, hmm. I'm studying for the auditor exam. Do you have any suggestions to focus on? Oh, Naomi, I wish I had it still linked. They used to have for the CPMA exam the outside resources to look at, like specific things on the CMS website, the OIG work plan. It's been a hot minute since I took the auditor exam. That was actually my second credential, and that was, like, shortly after it came out long ago. My recommendation would be, and I apologize, I can't share the screen with you on this one on TikTok, but if you go to the AAPC website and you go to where those certifications are, so I'm looking at the CPMA, and if you go to, I think it's under taking the exam. Yeah. If you go to taking the exam and then scroll all the way to the bottom, it'll tell you the scope of all of the different questions that they're gonna ask, like, what are the topics? So if we look at the ones for CPMA, it'll talk to you about medical record standards and documentation guidelines. It's gonna cover the medical record, HIPAA privacy and release of medical record information, covered entities, HIPAA privacy regulations, JCO documentation standards, record retention, ABNs, legal requirement of the medical record, analyzing the operative report. So I would just go through that whole list and make sure like you have studied each of those topics. I really like the study guides. I think they've been doing a greater job at breaking things down. There used to be a book that I would recommend for the auditing certification. I don't anymore, but it was Medical Records Auditor by Deb Grider. I don't think she's updated that in a hot minute. But I also really like NAMUS, the National Alliance of Medical Auditing Specialists. Shannon DeConda, she's great. I would follow her anywhere. I mean, as far as medical coding and auditing goes, I guess. So she's also a very nice person. Um, But for those of you that are interested, auditing tends to be a very reasonable next step for most medical coders. When we get into medical coding, we finish our certifications, we get that job, and then we were like, okay, well, cool. Like, what's the next one? Like, what's the next certification? I've known some people that they realize that they want to go further in their careers, and they're like, you know what? I think I want to go for if they haven't gotten their associate's degree yet, their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree. I have a lot of friends that really loved WGU, and I think especially because of the way it's structured that it's like you pick as many classes as you want per term and they charge you the same flat fee. So some people have finished their associate's bachelor's and masters in record time because of just the way that they're structured, and they love it, and they said that it's a great program. But auditing tends to be a next kind of intuitive step, you know, really looking at a lot of auditing is done kind of after the fact. There's some that is done, like, as it's happening, but really being able to analyze kind of what happened? Was there something in here that happened that I'm not seeing? What are the regulations that we need to maybe take stronger looks at? What are our risks? There's some things that tend to be more prone to errors. We've got a lot going on now with providers trying to automate their documentation. It's not a part of the career that they like. They like taking care of patients. They don't like having to write all of it down and do all the paperwork. I mean, it's totally understandable. But what's happening is the tech bros are getting into that space and they're putting together all kinds of programs, and some of them are good and some of them are, yeah. Courts are deciding different opinions about these different programs. You know, I feel a little bit similar with ChatGPT. There's some people that use ChatGPT and they're very, very smart about it. And there's some people that I can tell on LinkedIn are just having ChatGPT create posts for them and they're just hitting copy paste. Providers are doing the same thing. They're like, hey, just make my note, click done, 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 done. And then there's others that are being very intuitive. They might have a template and they're like, oh, I'm going to plug this in here and this in here and this in there. And others are just click, 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 click. They don't want to be bothered with it. Um, which presents some legal risks, some compliance risks, some certainly ethical considerations, you know. So there's a lot more activity going on in the auditing world as we're trying to progress technologies and all kinds of things. I have a close friend that is very involved in the legal aspects of things, and she'll tell me every now and then about, some of the topics and things that she's seeing a lot of, and that seems to be a big one right now is things getting questioned in court based off of some of the automation that's going on. Mm. Mm. DJ Ellie says, "What are some of the best study tactics for exams?" I'm actually covering that. I'm not sure if it's next presentation or the one after that. I would recommend if you go through a school and they give you all kinds of resources, they're like, "Here's your books and your notes and your studies." And a lot of times what instructors will do is they'll say, "Okay, we're gonna all study chapter 3, and I want you to do the practice questions for chapter 3, but just the odd ones or just the even ones." If that's the case, go back and do all of them. If you're refreshing for your exam, go through, read through that chapter again and go, "Oh, you know what? There's some questions on here that I didn't answer. I'm gonna practice using those." If we're talking CPC exam, keep an eye out for when the AEPC has deals. I think there's a deal that they run maybe twice a year where they will say, "Okay, if you buy um, a study guide will include practice." Oh, if you buy the exam voucher, will include study guide and practice exams with no additional cost. Um, and I like those. I really like the official ones. I think supplementing though is good because sometimes other organizations will explain things in a way that just tends to make things fit together in your brain the correct way. Um, and there's certain ones that I prefer to go to sometimes for training, but the official study guides are great. Be really careful if you're buying stuff off of Amazon or eBay or even with some of these websites anymore, like I'll even get Facebook ads and Instagram ads, and it's from some generic, like, healthcare certification prep company, and they're like, "Oh, you can download all of these CPC exam questions. We'll give you 500 of them for $30." And the thing that concerns me about some of them is they don't really tell you, like, who developed them, where they came from, like, they're almost like this very generic company, and it makes me very suspicious that they pulled them from somewhere, that they're inaccurate, they might be old because there's not really a good place to go back to complain, and sometimes if it's a lower cost item, like a $30 study guide or study reference, people tend to be less inclined to complain about something they only paid $30 for, and I think some places know that. So they will intentionally make these cheapy, like, "Oh, CPC exam prep, this will help you, blah, blah, blah," and set the price super low so they can sell a ton of them and then not have to worry too much if a handful of people complain about it. If you're interested, though, I also have, if you're ready to take your CPC exam soon, I have a review course that's available on my website. As I'm just saying about don't buy, be well, not don't buy, but be careful about some of those lookups. I have a review course on my website that is, $50, and it's the CPC exam, and it takes you through all the different chapters, and we go through a little case study at the end of each chapter, and we talk about, some of the things that people tend to either trip up more or that they like to test on a lot for the CPC exam, so that's another option out there. If you like the way that I instruct, you can find that on my website at contempocoding.com. Um, I know I saw. What about internship training? Do you recommend to get your foot in the door? Absolutely, if you can find it. Internships and externships are still unfortunately difficult to come across in medical coding. There's a lot, that has to be set up for these types of situations because it's healthcare. So they have to set up and make sure that you are not in a situation where you're not allowed to, that you're still allowed to like participate in viewing, I don't wanna say in the Medicare program, but kind of, that you don't have anything that would prohibit you from working in healthcare and seeing private medical records and insurance information and so forth. Um, they have to have HIPAA training. They have to give you all of these, access to programs that are might have sensitive materials in them. So, there's a lot of steps that have to go through in order to have an internship or an externship, and, uh And, some people think that that's very difficult to set up. They're not too hard once you've got the original foundation in place. I actually just took on an extern, and it wasn't too hard to, like I'm like, "Oh, okay, here's all the check boxes of, like, the things I need my extern to have to make sure that I complete the requirements of the externship, and then also, like, that they've had HIPAA training and all of that." And it's not too hard to put it together, and then when you need another extern, it's like, "Oh, yeah, here's the form that they fill out, and here's all this and that." I really think that more organizations should be doing that, setting up internship and externship programs. If you go on to the AAPC job board, that's where they now post where the externships are. So it's jobs.aapc.com. Most of the places, though, are looking for someone who's already completed their CPC certification, and now they're looking to get some kind of experience. So it's not like an externship, like they'll train you on the job type of thing. It's more so that it's a healthcare organization or an insurance company that's looking for people that they can give experience to and have start getting familiar with some of the aspects of working in this industry, but you might be helping with some lesser projects, not just like, "Hey, here's some cases for you to code," but like, "We're getting an audit. Can you pull some of these medical records? Can you validate that these are still correct codes on this form? Can you look at this audit that we just got from insurance and, make sure and double check it and see, like, do you think these codes are correct before we go ahead and send all of these records out to the insurance? Like, we just wanna kinda maybe get a feel for, are we gonna have to pay you money back or something like that?" So it's those coding adjacent types of jobs, not necessarily like, "Here's some surgery, start coding today." But jobs.aapc.com, you can filter through for some of those externship, opportunities that they do have. So, yeah. Thank you all for tuning in today. I will have the video available on replay for LinkedIn, for Facebook. I think keeps them up for a certain amount of time, but they're always available on YouTube. Next time, we will be covering the next section of the career workshop. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, just keep on coding on.